For years, Darth Vader was the embodiment of fear and order in the Galactic Empire. After the execution of Order 66 and the fall of the Jedi Order, he led brutal campaigns across multiple star systems, eliminating any trace of dissent in the name of Palpatine. In the far reaches of the galaxy, his name was whispered as an omen of destruction. He showed no compassion or doubt. His missions were always carried out with ruthless efficiency. Villages razed, leaders captured and hanged, forgotten temples destroyed along with their last protectors. The red light of his saber was the final sentence for anyone who dared to resist the new regime. He was the Emperor's iron fist, his living blade, and in his presence, silence was the only form of reverence. However, the years left invisible marks. With each new planet subjugated, with each new enemy fallen, a different shadow began to grow within him. A slight hesitation, almost imperceptible, but real. In lonely moments, in his private quarters, he allowed old memories to return. Flashes of a time before the armor, voices from the past buried under the ashes of anger. Even so, his loyalty to Sidious was unquestionable. The Emperor was all he had left. Mentor, master, and reason for his existence. But this bond, though powerful, was beginning to show small cracks, even if Vader couldn't name them. Over time, the events of Episode 4 unfolded. The search for the stolen Death Star plans brought him face to face with old faces and new threats. When he finally found Ben Kenobi, now an old man, the reunion carried the weight of decades of unresolved history. The duel began in the corridors of the space station, but continued in other areas, and from the outset it was clear that Vader had the upper hand. His blows were accurate and powerful, and Kenobi, now older, could barely keep up with the fury of his former apprentice. However, at the decisive moment, when everything seemed to be coming to an end, an unexpected change occurred. Obi-Wan escaped. Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewbacca couldn't believe it when the old Jedi joined them on the Millennium Falcon, exhausted but alive. During their escape, Ben approached Luke and said, "He had the chance to destroy me," and he hesitated. Luke looked at him, confused. "You think he let you get away?" Leia asked. Ben nodded slowly. "For a moment, I saw something behind the mask. Maybe a doubt. Maybe a memory." Han let out a skeptical whistle. "Well, whatever it was, we got lucky. Let's hope he hesitates next time." Chewbacca grunted in agreement. Still panting, Kenobi murmured, "It wasn't luck, it was choice." Shortly thereafter, the Rebel Alliance organized the decisive attack against the Death Star. The coordinates were set, the mission was clear. Hit the vulnerable spot revealed in the plans and destroy the Imperial weapon. Luke Skywalker, still inexperienced but naturally talented, took one of the fighters. During the attack, Obi-Wan guided him through the communicators while remaining at Leia's side, guiding the mission, and with a precise shot, Luke managed to hit the main reactor. The explosion consumed the station and was colossally gigantic, and the screams of the Imperials were lost in the vacuum. It was the first major victory for the rebels, and the greatest humiliation for the Empire to date. Sometime later, on Coruscant, inside the Imperial throne room, Darth Vader appeared before Palpatine. The hooded figure watched him with eyes that glowed with contained hatred. "The Death Star has been destroyed, and the rebels have escaped. Some stormtroopers claim that you hesitated before your former master, that you let him live, that there was mercy. Is that true, Lord Vader?" Vader remained silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the words. "Lies. Kenobi escaped through cunning, not by my will." Palpatine moved closer. "Are you telling me that those soldiers lied?" Vader rose slowly, turning his body calmly. The accusing stormtroopers were called forward, lined up, and for a moment they tried to maintain their posture. But Vader's hand rose, and with a gesture of the Force, their bodies began to writhe, their throats closing. Their helmets vibrated with muffled sounds of agony. "They have dishonored the Empire with their weakness," Vader declared, as one by one, the soldiers fell dead before him. Palpatine smiled, satisfied. "Let this be an example. There will be no more failures, my friend." And Vader replied, his metallic voice echoing through the columns of the hall. "They will not escape again, my master. I will hunt them down myself." And in the silence of the room, only the sound of mechanical breathing filled the air. The Emperor turned and walked slowly back to his throne, lost in thought. He knew that something had changed, however small. But for now, Vader was still his. He was still the most lethal weapon in the galaxy. He still believed that control remained firm. Still, but for how long? The doubt now lay not only with Vader, it was beginning to take hold in the very throne of the Empire. And in the shadows between the systems, the echo of rebellion grew, fueled by a spark that Vader himself, perhaps unwittingly, had allowed to live. The meeting at the rebel base was tense. The Empire's latest actions, especially after the destruction of the Death Star, had put the rebel leaders on high alert. Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan sat with other Alliance commanders, discussing plans to keep their forces alive and protect Allied systems. It was during this meeting that Obi-Wan asked to speak. In a calm but firm voice, he warned, "What I discovered during our last encounter with Darth Vader must be kept secret, at least for now. There is a possibility, one that cannot be ignored." Eyes turned to him. Luke leaned forward, intrigued. Leia, on the other hand, crossed her arms and frowned. "There is a chance that Anakin Skywalker still exists within Darth Vader," Obi-Wan continued. "During the duel, there was a moment, an instant when I felt something, a deviation, a hesitation. And I believe that perhaps, even buried beneath everything he has become, there may still be remnants of the man he once was." The room fell silent, the leaders exchanging uncertain glances. Kenobi then added, "But this must remain between us. If it is true, we must find a way to reach that fragment before it disappears forever." Leia was the first to respond. "With all due respect, Master Kenobi, that is naive." She stood up, her voice heavy with emotion. "You speak of hesitation, of a glimmer of hope, but what I saw was death. Alderaan was destroyed. Thousands died without a chance to defend themselves. And it wasn't just any officer who commanded that. It was him, Vader. That man is a monster." Luke looked down thoughtful. "But what if Ben is right?" he whispered. Leia replied almost instantly, "He killed my aunt and uncle, but is it too late for redemption?" Luke spoke calmly, turning his gaze back to Obi-Wan. "You knew him. He was your apprentice. If anyone can see that, it's you. But how will we know if there is still something to achieve?" Kenobi took a deep breath and replied, "Only by facing him again. Only by looking into his eyes, listening to his voice. Only then will we know for sure." Leia shook her head in frustration. "I just hope it doesn't cost us more lives." And Mon Mothma concluded, "For now, let's focus on survival. The Empire's forces are growing increasingly aggressive." Time passed, and the events on the ice planet Hoth altered the rebellion's routine. Imperial troops had located the rebel base, and the offensive was relentless. During the evacuation, Obi-Wan and Luke took one of the rebel fleet's adapted fighters to try to protect the fleeing transports. But as they broke through the atmosphere, they came face to face with Vader's personal ship. The Dark Lord led the charge in his advanced TIE fighter, eliminating rebel fighters with overwhelming coldness. The chase began amid the ice fragments and wreckage of the air battle, with Luke and Obi-Wan trying to throw off the enemy. During the chase, Obi-Wan activated the communication channel, trying to reach something beyond the combat. "Anakin, listen to me," he said, dodging shots. "Do you remember who you were? Do you remember Padme? The promise you made?" But on the other side, there was only silence. A second later, Vader's TIE fired a precise burst that hit the hull of Luke's ship, forcing him to make risky maneuvers. Obi-Wan shouted, "Anakin, there's still time." But again, the only response was red laser shots crossing space with relentless fury. Vader did not hesitate with any other enemy, nor did he show them mercy. Luke's ship spun as it moved away from the blasts. "He's going to hit us," Luke shouted. Obi-Wan took the auxiliary controls and activated an emergency evasive maneuver, diving into an asteroid field where they hoped to lose Vader. The chase became a game of reflexes and nerves. Vader eliminated the other rebels who were trying to escape one by one. There was no mercy in his movements, only precision and death. Luke and Obi-Wan jumped out of hyperspace seconds before being hit by a tracking missile, narrowly escaping with their shields collapsing and their main engine damaged. Inside the damaged and still shaking cockpit, Luke looked at Kenobi. "You tried." And he didn't respond. The old master lowered his eyes, disappointed. "I called him by name, mentioned Padme. Nothing. If there was any spark of humanity left in him, it's buried deep. Maybe I was wrong." When they finally managed to meet up with the nearest rebel cell, they were greeted by Leia. The reunion was tense. Obi-Wan sat down in front of them and, with a heavy expression, said, "It seems I was wrong, and there is nothing left of the man I knew in Vader, so I need to reveal something. I have something important to tell you, about who Vader really is, and about what I discovered in his heart, or in its absence." The truth was finally approaching. Inside an isolated room, Obi-Wan Kenobi watched Leia and Luke, both still marked by recent events. "There's something you both need to know, something that will change everything." Luke stared at him, confused. "It's about Vader, isn't it?" Obi-Wan nodded. "Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker was your father, Luke. He is the father of both of you. You are both children of Anakin and Padme." The silence became heavy. Leia frowned and continued to listen to the old man's words. "What?" Luke whispered, his voice breaking. That can't be true. Twins? There's no way." Leia turned to Kenobi, indignant. "You're wrong. This doesn't make any sense. My father was Bail Organa. I grew up on Alderaan, surrounded by honor and principles. How dare you compare that to what Vader is?" Obi-Wan kept his voice calm but determined. "Bail was your foster father. He loved you as a daughter and raised you with nobility. But the two of you, Luke and you, Leia, are the children of Anakin Skywalker." Luke shook his head, his eyes wide. "No, that's not possible. It can't be true." Leia cried. "That's not who I am. My father was a just man. Vader destroyed Alderaan. He killed everyone I knew. My mother, my friends, my childhood. You want me to believe I'm his daughter? Of a monster?" Obi-Wan took a step closer. "You've always felt something different inside you, haven't you? A connection to others. Keen intuition. That is the Force, Leia. It lives in you because you are the daughter of someone who was once the chosen one." But Leia, her eyes brimming with tears, backed away. "No, you're crazy, old man. You're trying to break what's left of me." As Leia cried silently, Luke stood up abruptly, his face contorted with pain and rage. "You're saying that murderer is my father? He killed my family. He destroyed my uncles. He killed Owen, he killed Beru. And now you tell me I carry his blood?" Luke threw a small communicator against the wall and shouted, "Why?" He knelt down, leaning against the wall, his hands covering his face. The anger, the pain, the grief, all mixed together in a silence that said more than any scream. Obi-Wan took a few steps back, feeling the weight of his words fall on those young people. He said nothing more for several hours. He gave Luke and Leia the time they needed. Time to deny, to grieve, to digest. When the silence between them was finally broken, it was Leia who spoke first. "If it's true, if even part of it is true, what do we do with it?" And then Kenobi approached again, more serious than ever. "You must become stronger. The war is far from over. And the truth you carry may be what will change everyone's destiny." Luke looked up, his eyes still full of resentment. "You want me to become like him?" Kenobi replied firmly. "I want you to become what he should have been. Leia, the Force lives in you too. I trained Anakin when he was young, and now destiny wants me to train you. But my time is running out. You must continue where I left off." Leia still hesitated. "Me? Use the Force? I've never trained. I've never had that ability." And Kenobi said, "But it lives in you. It always has. Your blood carries the heritage of someone destined to bring balance. Perhaps, together, you can do it. With the decision made, the next mission was clear. Obi-Wan gathered the two young men and spoke solemnly. There is only one person alive who can help you prepare, an ancient, wise soul who knew the Force more deeply than anyone else. His name is Yoda. Luke frowned. Yoda? I've never heard that name. Leia asked, Is he a Jedi? Kenobi replied, He is the Jedi, but locating him would be a complicated task. For days, he tried to establish contact through secret channels and ancient codes, but no sign came. Frustrated, Obi-Wan isolated himself in a chamber at the base, giving himself over completely to meditation. Weeks passed. Leia and Luke trained as best they could and talked about all the madness. Were they really the brother and children of that monster? Kenobi remained silent, increasingly absorbed, until, amid the emptiness of the Force, a familiar voice came to old Ben Kenobi, one he hadn't heard in years, since the days of the Old Republic. It was Qui-Gon Jinn. Obi-Wan, listen, whispered the voice, ethereal, formless. Kenobi kept his eyes closed and said, Master, I need guidance. I need to find Yoda. The answer came like a breeze. Dagobah. There he is, waiting. Obi-Wan awoke with his heart racing. He ran to Luke and Leia. I found the answer, or rather, the Force brought it to me. Luke asked, What do you mean? Kenobi looked at them both. Let's go find Yoda. He is our last hope. The arrival at Dagobah was anything but graceful. The small rebel ship plunged into thick clouds, and the swamp seemed to want to swallow them from the moment they touched the ground. The water bubbled, creatures jumped around, and the smell of dampness was almost unbearable. Leia complained about insects bigger than rats, while Luke tried to balance himself on the moss-covered roots. Obi-Wan, with his typical serenity, just walked along, as if this chaos were almost a reunion with the past. And then, without warning, a small creature with large ears and mischievous eyes appeared, poking at the supplies with a crooked stick and muttering things like, Tasty, the cookies are. Leia jumped back, putting her hand on the handle of her blaster, while Luke whispered, What is that? The little creature, ignoring the fright it caused, climbed onto the boxes, rummaged through clothes and food, and then picked up a flashlight as if it were a trophy. It shines too bright. To scare Kifrins, this will work. Obi-Wan watched, saying nothing. Finally, the little creature pointed the stick at the three of them and said with a humorous grimace, Yoda I am. You were looking for me. Master Kenobi, it is a pleasure. There was silence. Luke blinked. Leia frowned. You're the Jedi Master we came looking for? The little one laughed, and Obi-Wan said, What did you expect? A warrior with a shiny cape and big muscles. Luke crossed his arms. I thought it would be different. Leia was more direct. Are you really who you say you are? Because the guy who rummaged through my backpack and licked my rations doesn't look like someone who could defeat a Sith. Yoda smiled. By size you judge. More than muscles, the Force is. Wisdom it is. Patience you must have. The planet, for its part, did not help with the adjustment. It was damp, slippery, and full of strange noises. Leia complained about moss getting into her boots. Luke constantly slipped in mud, and even Obi-Wan acknowledged that the weather was a little excessive. In a moment alone, while the twins tried to build a makeshift shelter, Obi-Wan and Yoda sat on a tall moss-covered root. The old Jedi Master watched the swamp as if he heard lost voices. You feel them, Yoda? They carry something strong. Yoda replied, more seriously, Light and darkness carry both. Like Anakin, they are. But Anakin, they are not. Obi-Wan sighed. We must train them with everything we have. And Yoda agreed. Training began the next day. Luke showed an aptitude for the exercises. He ran between roots, lifted stones with increasing difficulty, and meditated for hours with almost complete focus. Leia, on the other hand, had a slower start. Obi-Wan taught her in silence, using leaves for her to move with her mind. She became frustrated and grumbled, This is useless. Kenobi replied, always calm. The Force does not impose itself. It listens, and it responds. Over time, Leia learned to feel the energy in plants, in marsh birds, and even in the planet's waters. Her power grew quietly but elegantly. Yoda, with his unique patience, took Luke and Leia into the depths of the Force. They walked in silence through the mist, while he spoke of detachment, compassion, and balance. Fear is the path of the dark side, but not fear itself. Control of it is. In one exercise, he made Luke lift a giant rock while balancing Leia on his shoulders. In another, he guided them both through a meditation where they had to identify echoes from the past and face them. Obi-Wan contributed with lightsaber training, strategy, and emotional control. While Yoda was the spirit, Kenobi was the discipline. And together, they molded the twins into something greater. Months passed, then years, and with time, the makeshift base became a home. Luke, now more mature, moved rocks and logs with fluid gestures. Leia was able to guide animals through the instinct of the Force, sensing her environment with surprising sensitivity. One day, Yoda took Obi-Wan aside and said, "So different they are, and yet balanced they form." And in a solemn moment, Obi-Wan opened an old box and handed Luke his father's blue lightsaber. "Anakin fought with this lightsaber in the Clone Wars. Now it is yours." Yoda then offered Leia a smaller, green lightsaber, made from a crystal he had kept for decades. The two siblings looked at each other. This was the symbol that they were ready. For days, they trained together under the watchful eyes of their two masters. Their movements became synchronized. Luke sought precision, Leia agility. In practice duels, Luke used the Force to anticipate attacks, while Leia used sensory illusions to confuse him. They both learned to cooperate, to trust each other, and most importantly, to understand that the blood they carried did not define them. They were ready, and as they spun their lightsabers in the dim light of Dagobah, Obi-Wan whispered to Yoda, "They will be different. They will not fall." And Yoda, smiling sadly and hopefully, replied, "We shall see, we shall see." It was in the lands of Lando Calrissian, the administrator of a city in the clouds, that troubling news arrived. The Empire had taken control of the region with speed and brutality, and Han Solo, who had recently returned from a mission undercover, had been captured. Yoda, sensing the disturbance in the Force, remained on the swamp planet, silent but with his eyes fixed on the future. Obi-Wan, however, left with the twins. He knew that this moment was inevitable. The journey that began decades ago was now about to reach its climax. They arrived in silence, hidden amid the tunnels and corridors of Cloud City. They dodged patrols, dismantled surveillance systems, and disabled Imperial sentries with precise movements. The twins moved like shadows, guided by the Force and their determination. When they finally reached the freezing chamber where Han had been held, they saw Darth Vader waiting. He was calm, imposing, but then he realized the bodies of his soldiers lay unconscious around him. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Luke with his blue lightsaber lit, Leia with her green lightsaber, and Obi-Wan steadfast as ever. Darth Vader watched the trio in silence. For a brief moment, his shoulders moved as if he had let out a slight sigh. "So that's why I didn't sense you coming, Kenobi." The metallic voice echoed off the walls. Luke advanced first. "Today ends." The confrontation began with brutal intensity. Luke struck from the right, Leia from the left. Obi-Wan covered them, using the Force to manipulate the environment, pushing boxes and barrels to hinder the Sith's movements. Vader defended himself masterfully, blocking the 2 lightsabers with precise movements and spinning on his own axis. In a moment of tension, Luke jumped and swung his lightsaber in a vertical arc, which Vader blocked. At the same time, Leia slid across the floor and made a sideways cut at her enemy's knees, forcing him to retreat. Vader responded by lifting them both into the air with the Force, but Obi-Wan intervened, breaking his hold with an invisible push that freed them. The ground shook. Vader reached out and lifted a colossal metal structure, throwing it at the 3. But Kenobi, with visible effort, stretched out both arms and used all his concentration to suspend the piece in the air, deflecting it away before it hit the young people. The battle continued, and as powerful as Vader was in the Force, he seemed to hesitate to attack with everything he had. It was as if Vader himself was in doubt, but acting on instinct. The twins cornered him with speed and precision, forcing him to retreat inch by inch. In a quick movement, Luke swung his lightsaber over his shoulder and came down hard, but Vader blocked and responded with a kick that sent him flying. Leia tried to counterattack, but was violently repelled. Taking advantage of the opening, Vader concentrated all his fury and threw the twins against the wall with a powerful push of the Force. Obi-Wan, seeing the attack, leaped forward to protect them, but at that moment, Vader's red lightsaber pierced Kenobi's chest. The old master fell to his knees, gasping for breath, still alive but mortally wounded. "Ben!" Luke and Leia cried out in unison. Their anger and pain turned into strength. In perfect sync, the two advanced on Vader. Luke attacked from above, Leia from below. Vader tried to block both attacks, but he was hesitating after striking his former master in the chest, and the lightsabers crossed in a perfect movement, cutting the Dark Lord like a pair of scissors. With Vader down, the two rushed to Obi-Wan. He smiled weakly. You did it." Luke knelt down. "Don't leave us now, Master. Please." Kenobi raised his hand and touched Leia's face. You are light, girl. Never doubt that." Then he turned to Luke. "And you brought balance, as he should have done." His eyes slowly closed. "The Force is with you." Obi-Wan Kenobi passed away right there, with a smile on his lips and no hurt in his heart, and with the thought that yes, in the final moment, he felt that Vader had stopped his movements on purpose and accepted the cruel fate of the twins' lightsabers. With the fall of Darth Vader and the sacrifice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Skywalker twins became the beating heart of the rebellion. Leia, with her eloquence and courage, traveled across systems and ancient alliances, summoning senators, tribal leaders, merchant clans, and even pirates of forgotten honor. Luke, meanwhile, proved himself not just a symbol, but a real force on the battlefield, defending oppressed worlds and inspiring new rebel cells. With each victory, more worlds joined the cause. The rebel fleet grew, and the days of imperial rule began to crumble under the weight of hope and unity. When the galactic war erupted, the skies of dozens of systems were filled with light and fire. Distant stars were the stage for monumental battles, where new Alliance cruisers faced Imperial destroyers with bravery and strategy. X-Wing fighters pursued TIE fighters in spirals of smoke and plasma, red and blue projectiles crossing space like throws in a final game. Explosions bloomed in the vacuum like dark fireworks. And amid these clashes, Leia and Luke flew together, guiding the troops with sabers in hand and the Force flowing like a raging river. Each battle won brought another victory, and then the impossible became reality. They invaded Coruscant. In the heart of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by black columns and the oppressive darkness of the dark side, the twins stood face to face with their final obstacle. Emperor Palpatine awaited them. His appearance was even more deformed, his eyes glowing with ancient and evil hatred. With a flick of his fingers, Force lightning bolts shot toward Luke, who defended himself by raising his blue lightsaber with difficulty. Leia ran sideways, using her green lightsaber to cut the energy pulses before they reached her brother. "You are fools, children of a failure," Palpatine growled, drawing a red lightsaber and advancing with fury. The combat was swift. In the first move, Luke swung his lightsaber in a horizontal arc to block Palpatine's frontal attack. While Leia ducked and slid to strike his legs, he jumped back like an animal. In the second move, he channeled the Force to lift Leia into the air and throw her against a wall. But Luke deflected his lightsaber at the last second and created an energy barrier that cushioned his sister's fall. In the third move, Leia, recovering quickly, spun on her own axis and blocked a lightning strike that would have hit Luke in the back with her green Yoda lightsaber. The fourth and decisive blow came when Luke distracted the Emperor with a series of quick strikes, and Leia jumped from a broken pillar and descended with her lightsaber in hand. The two advanced at the same time. Like a pair of scissors of light and justice, the lightsabers pierced Palpatine from opposite sides. The cry he let out was not human, but echoed like the end of an era. His body convulsed, lightning bolts escaping from his fingers, before dissolving into pure energy and fading away. The silence after his fall was absolute, as if the galaxy itself had held its breath. And then, it breathed again. With the death of the last Dark Lord, the galaxy awoke to a new era. The systems that had once lived in fear now sang the names of Luke and Leia as saviors. The new republic began to rise from the ashes of the fallen empire. Once rival peoples now built together. The Skywalker twins refused absolute power, preferring to guide and teach rather than rule. And so, amid brighter stars and a still fragile peace, the galaxy finally found its way again. The Force was at last in balance, and hope had won.